So I wanted to make this video today to talk about how I believe that feminism lies to women. And first, I'm just going to define feminism. I'll read the Webster's definition. Feminism is the belief in and advocacy of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes, expressed especially through organized activity on behalf of women's rights and interests. So, sounds pretty good, right? But I'm going to talk about how I think the definition, the theory is a lot different from how it's playing out. And then, feminism is considered to be up to 4 waves now. And so the first wave was like women's suffrage, right? Like the mid 1800s, early 1900s, women looking for the right to vote, fighting for the right to vote. And then the 1960s, it was like all about women's liberation and sexual freedom and, going out into the workforce more. Third wave was in the 90s. That was really more of a rebellious, I think, kind of countercultural thing, kind of more rebellious and anarchistic. And then, the current one that we're in is, I think, fueled a lot by just the internet and social media. It's a lot about like intersectionality and like kind of pulling other groups who are oppressed supposedly into kind of the fold of feminism. So that's what I'm talking about when I refer to feminism in this video, kind of like the process of how that theory, which sounds good, is playing out. So I wrote some stuff down and I'm gonna kind of read it and then comment as I go. But again, like any theory, like all the isms, right? Like communism, socialism, all the feminism, all these things that I learned about, really dove into in my liberal education. It sounds really good, but it's not working out the way that I think people want it to. And it's supposedly, right, all about social equality. And I believe that we are all of equal value in the eyes of God. And I don't think, I wouldn't argue with that. I know that most people wouldn't argue with that if they believe in God. But, okay, I'm going to get back to this. So it seems like from the very first wave, the architects of feminism sought to make women more like men, not help women truly embrace like what it means to be a woman. And I think that's the rub. I think that is like the seed of the problem, is because women aren't men. Women aren't like men in so many ways. So I'll illustrate what I mean first, personally, and then I'm going to get into a little bit of historical, cultural examples of how I think feminism lies to women. I grew up, I'm a millennial. The message I took away from movies, music, TV shows was definitely that a woman is not living up to her full potential if she doesn't seek a career outside the home. The message in like all the sitcoms I watched was that a woman can have it all. She can have a full-time profession. She can be the mom of multiple children. She can be a happy wife. She can be desired sexually by men or suitors. Like shows like The Fresh Prince, I watched a lot. Vivian Banks, or Aunt Viv, she was a PhD at UCLA and a teacher at UCLA. She, like Home Improvement, that was another one. Jill, the mom, started out the show. She was a stay-at-home mom and she was feeling like unfulfilled and she wanted to go out into the workforce. And like there was a lot of the show about her, that process of her doing that. Friends was another one where all the women were portrayed like engrossed in their, sexual escapades and their careers, and like they were totally disinterested in family and marriage. And then later, Rachel, she ends up marrying Ross. But anyway, that was not the point. That was not like kind of the main theme of the show. The main theme of the show was like they were having sex with a bunch of different guys and all of their dramas around that, and the men too. Seinfeld is another. I still love that show. I think the humor is great. But the message, especially to women, I think, because Elaine is the only female character in the show, and she is sexually promiscuous, and she's like totally pro, abortion, and there's an episode about that, and it's just like, and all of the characters are sexually promiscuous. I don't think that it's just Elaine, but I think that it was really glorified in that show, and it was portrayed as totally normal, and they were having fun, right? What's wrong with that? It was definitely like anti-marriage and anti-family. Similarly, the music I listen to, like artists TLC, Aaliyah, Alanis Morissette, Christina Aguilera, Spice Girls, they portrayed the woman as the aggressor. Like she was the kind of sexual, like, goddess, and it was very sexual music, and the same with the movies, all the big movies, the big blockbuster movies. It was like, the message was, it's outdated and antiquated to be just a wife and a mom. You're not living up to your full potential if you don't have a career. It wasn't portrayed as respectable to be a wife and a mom, to be just a wife and a mom. And I just want to clarify, I don't believe that women should not be allowed to be educated. I don't believe that women should not be allowed to have careers or vote or own land. This is about, like, so we all are of equal value in God's eyes. I believe that. Excuse me. And I believe that a healthy society that values God's word and God's, blueprint for humankind is going to also see women as of equal value. But what happens when a society tells little girls and women, like, that being a wife and a mom is like passé, and it's not to be desired, shouldn't be the focus of your life. Like, what's going to happen to that society? I think we're seeing that played out now. The birth rate is declining in so many, industrialized countries. What does that mean for us, So I think feminism lies to women because it tells them they are just like men, and we aren't. It tells us that we're going to be fulfilled in the role of a CEO or an attorney general or whatever. It's all career and no family or very little family. There's a woman, her name is Rachel Wilson. She's written a really good book. I can't remember the name of it. It's The Occult History of Feminism, but I'll link it, or I'll include it in the show notes. But she says, we tell women it's beneath them, that they aren't living up to their full potential if they want to stay home and make their husband a sandwich. But then we praise them if they go to work at Subway and make sandwiches for some big corporation that doesn't care about them. It's kind of silly when you think about it. I think feminism lies to women because it teaches us that we're wired like men when we aren't. It equates sexual promiscuity with liberation, and it seeks to free women from the natural results of sex with a male partner, which is often conception. Anyone who's ever had sex, even protected sex, they know that there is a potential consequence of that being, getting pregnant. And I'm not condoning sexual promiscuity in men at all. I think, promiscuity damages men and women, but the consequences for women are both biologically and culturally far greater. And feminism lies to women about this. It's portrayed like all fun and games, young woman, She can have all multiple sexual partners, not settle down, has a line of suitors out the door, you know. But what is that same woman's life like when she's in her 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond? Like, the adventure has passed. The suitors, they're not calling anymore. You know, she's probably spends a lot of her time alone because she didn't invest in that family and that relationship with a husband when she could have. And not that a woman later in life can't get married, of course. Like, we know that people get divorced and they get remarried. And I wish, you know, that for every woman who wants to get, and man who wants to find that life partner, you know, that special someone. But it's just harder. It's harder to do when you're older. I think anybody who's trying to date, you know, out of their 30s, like, will tell you that it does get a little harder. I just think we're not being real with women about that. I think feminism is totally just ignoring that whole topic. Yeah, in Genesis 2:24, the Bible says, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and shall be joined to his wife, and the two become one flesh." And I think that phrase, one flesh, is really powerful. You know, this is God's design for us. We take care of each other in the same way that we take care of our own bodies. We're one flesh. And like, parse that out to what is happening to a woman or a man who becomes one flesh with multiple people, sometimes dozens of people throughout their life. Like, what does that do, you know, physically, spiritually, mentally? I think that there is a toll. And then lastly, feminism lies to women because it tells them motherhood isn't necessarily part of being a woman. And like, of course, not everyone is going to become a mother physically and have, you know, birth her own children. That's not what I'm talking about. But we have a biological urge to mother. That is intrinsic in our nature. And of course, it's on a spectrum. Like, not all women are going to feel it the same and all that. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about women have a biological urge to mother. We will mother animals if we don't have babies, right? We will mother, you know, people at our workplace. Like, it's just part of our biology that you can't get rid of so easily. You know, I think women can get really good at drowning that out. They can take medications and, you know, drugs and alcohol and whatever people use to numb themselves, you know. That can definitely be part of the picture of why a woman might not have a strong urge to mother. But, you know, I think you can't really get around the biology. Like, it's true. It's math, right? It's like math. It's just there. 1 + 1 is 2. Estrogen, testosterone. Like, it's a real thing. You know, many feminist women who aren't able to or choose not to be mothers, they seem to end up playing that role in social justice movements or in, you know, education or healthcare professions, fighting on behalf of whatever the kind of current victims are in society that society's highlighting. And then that piece of social justice and feminism, it's such a big topic. I'll save it for another video. But there's a lot there, I think, to talk about. The direction I want to take with this motherhood and feminism topic is about the way feminism promotes abortion as a positive thing for women, which I don't believe it is. And I'm going to just define abortion. I brought up, you know, a really hot word that triggers people. So I'm going to define it. So I'm not referring to abortions that happen for medical reasons or incest or rape. I'm talking about that, you know, it's estimated 95 to 99% of abortions are done kind of as birth control, right? Like, the pregnancy came in a bad time. It's too expensive, you know, don't like the partner that I have isn't the person that I want to build a family with, like all kinds of reasons along those lines. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about a miscarriage. I'm not talking about the, you know, the mother's life or any kind of rape or incest. I've never had an abortion myself, but I know many women who have, and it all falls under that category, that the latter category, the examples I gave of, like, you know, it was bad timing. I was finishing my my education. I didn't have time, or I had a partner that I didn't want to be, you know, chained to whatever for life, or even abusive partners. Like, I mean, I understand the fear that comes when you get pregnant unexpectedly, and like there could be an abusive partner, you could be really struggling financially, or, you know, it's definitely game changing. We know that pregnancy and raising a child is not an easy thing that you should just undertake flippantly. And that's why, you know, part of why I'm making this video is to talk about that, because I think feminism lies to women about that. So I believe it's through pregnancy, birth, and child rearing that it's one of the avenues, and one of the main avenues, that a woman can become self-actualized, or, you know, closer to God through service. It puts us in harmony with the original life giver, right? It humbles us. It gets us out of selfish thinking and puts us in a place where we have to consider the needs of others before our own. You know, not many people want to undertake that. And so it's kind of, I think it's kind of beautiful that it is almost forced on us through the life of a family, of having a family. It's like exercising, you know, you don't want to do it. Oftentimes, you're not like stoked to go to the gym, but then you get there, you get going, and you're like, yeah, this is good for me. Like, this is hard, but it's good for me. I want to do it, you know? I love it. You don't ever regret going to the gym. So I know many women personally who would have stayed in abusive relationships, but once they had a child, they left those abusive boyfriends or husbands because they wouldn't allow their child to be abused. And similarly, like women I know who've gotten pregnant when they had been drinking or using drugs, or, you know, just involved in unhealthy lifestyle choices, and then they got pregnant, and they stopped those behaviors because it was more important to them to care for their child. And I think we'll do things for our children that we wouldn't necessarily do for ourselves, and this in turn makes us value ourselves more. And this isn't to say, like, have a baby so you can get rid of bad habits. I'm not saying use your baby in that regard, but it's something a lot of women and men just experience naturally after they have babies. Like, talk to any parent. I think a lot of people would agree with me that you naturally go through this change where if you're embracing parenthood, where you want to be better. You see your flaws and you want to be better for your kids. You know, I really believe that it makes us stronger. It makes us more giving of ourselves. It makes us more patient. It makes us more able to see the big picture, and ultimately it makes us more like Christ. So, you know, the message I was fed and accepted growing up is that motherhood is just like another hat you can wear, you know, along with having a career, being a wife, being admired and sexually, you know, desirable, that it was just like another one of those possible roles. And I think that message hurts women, because ultimately we are biologically mothers, whether we become mothers to physical children or not. This is part of our sacred God-given role in the world. It's intrinsically tied to our material body, which I think is part of the process, right? Our material body in Christianity is important. We're going to be resurrected in this material body. So I think it's of value to God. It's not something to kind of cut ourselves off from and kind of disdain, because it provides, it does sometimes limit us, right? Or it forces us into certain roles. Like you can become pregnant if you have sex with a man. But I don't think feminism embraces this gift of like women as life givers, as caretakers, as helpers to their mates. I didn't get that message growing up at all. Anyway, so I'm gonna wrap it up, but making these videos about feminism is really for other women, especially younger women than me, because I wish that someone had directly challenged me on my beliefs and made me think about where these beliefs were coming from and if I even wanted to take them on, I would just encourage young women to think of your life in 10, 20, 30 years. Who's going to be in your life? Who do you want to be in your life? Like, who do you want around you? How will you spend your days? Who's going to be with you in a health crisis or when a loved one dies, And I just want to encourage you also to not write off all men because you might have had a traumatic, abusive, or dysfunctional relationship. Maybe somebody cheated on you. Maybe they hurt you physically, verbally, whatever. Like, not all men are going to do that to you. And it's hard to find the right partner, right? That doesn't mean that it's impossible. There are good men out there who also desire to care for, to protect, to provide for their wife and family. And in exchange, we do what we do best as women. We nurture. We provide that stability in the home. We create a vibrant, healthy home. And that's not to say everybody's going to fall in that traditional, model for a family. And some women are going to work full-time. I work full-time. I'm not against that. I'm just saying, you work it out. You do the best you can, but you try, right? I don't think it's obviously, to me, not helpful to just write off all men as abusive or, incapable of having a healthy, strong relationship just because we've had that experience in the past. And a lot of women have. And I'm so sorry for that. I'm sorry that happened in my life. I'm sorry that that's happened in so many other women's lives. But we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, throw the whole marriage and family thing out because we've been hurt. God didn't make us to be alone. He created this blueprint for a family for a good reason. It's something solid that we can trust in, that we can hold on to. So that starts out as a seed and grows into this incredible garden. It's a place where we can serve and in turn be cared for. And I just want to leave you with a couple verses, scriptures, that I think are really beautiful about children and family. And the first one is Psalm 127, 3-5. Children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring a reward from him. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior are children born in one's youth. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. And Psalm 128, 1-4. Blessed are all who fear the Lord, who walk in obedience to him. You will eat the fruit of your labor. Blessings and prosperity will be yours. Your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house. Your children will be like olive shoots around your table. Yes, this will be a blessing for a man who fears the Lord. So that's it for today. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.